Good evening, everyone. My name is Julie Shields Rutina, and I am the Director of College Planning, Education, and Training at MEFA. And I'm so glad that so many of you are joining us tonight. I am joined by my colleague, Jennifer Bento-Pinion. And Jennifer is going to be moderating tonight and taking your questions and answers. So let me go through a few housekeeping pieces. First, we are recording this webinar tonight. So we will send you the slides and send you the recording tomorrow. So you don't have to take too many notes. And then you can share that recording with others who couldn't be here this evening. So that's one thing. The second is we have a lot of slides, a lot of information, but we want to answer your questions. So if you have a question at any point, just type it into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And at a few points during the webinar, we'll stop, we'll answer some questions, and Jennifer may be able to answer some right back to you immediately. And then we'll save some for the end too. And we'll just try to make sure that if it's a question that we think a lot of people will have, we'll answer that live and you'll be able to hear the answer. Let's see a few other things. If you would like closed captioning, you can click on the button at the bottom of your screen that says live transcript, and then you can see the words that we're speaking at the bottom of the screen. So I think that's it. So we will get started. All right, so I'll tell you a little bit about MEFA. MEFA has been around since 1982. We are a not-for-profit state authority, and we help families plan, save, and pay for college. What does that mean? We have low-cost loans for families who need financing. We have the state's two college savings plans, the U Fund and the U Plan, as well as the state's ABLE plan, Attainable. So we work with families, with students at every stage, from birth to college and beyond. But this is part of our free guidance that we give to families. And so we have a whole lot of webinars and a great website with information. So do stay in touch with us all the way through this college process. And we are just here to help you answer questions at any point in the process. So here's the agenda for this evening. We're going to talk about some current trends. And as you can imagine, with the year we've had, the year we're still having, there are some very recent trends as well. And we'll infuse some of those things throughout the presentation about how things are working in this virtual environment, this COVID-19 environment. And then we're going to talk about the student creating their college list and the process about how they'll go about doing that, thinking about the schools they want to apply to. We'll talk about what students can do instead of campus visits, and there's a lot, so we'll mention all of those things. Go through the actual application process that your student will use for admission, and we'll talk a little bit about financial aid and free resources at the end. So some trends. So in general, this has become an earlier process. So students now are beginning to apply to college in the fall of senior year, more often than just in the winter and the spring of senior year, as it was for a long time. And students don't have to do that, but since more and more schools have application processes that support that, more and more students are taking advantage of those early application processes. So we'll talk all about those, but just to know that that students are working on that in the fall, which is a really good thing that you're here tonight. Most of you probably have a junior, and this is great. This is perfect timing for you and your student to start working through this process. So if your student wants to apply early in the fall, he or she will be ready. Another trend is that students apply to a greater number of schools these days. And part of that is due to these large applications like the Common App, which allow a student to apply, fill out the application and just send it to a number of schools. So it makes it easy to add a few extra schools. So that has been a trend for a number of years. But you'll hear me say at some point that while that's terrific, really students should make sure that they really want to go to any college on their list. Don't just add a school because a friend is applying there, or they've heard something about it, but they're not really sure. Really make sure that that list represents a number of institutions that the student wants to attend. Now, because students are applying to a greater number of schools, that has given way to this next trend, which is demonstrated interest being a factor. So for colleges, when they receive applications from a student, they want to know that the student really wants to come to their institution. That's what they want. So they're hoping if we admit you, you will come. But since students are applying to more colleges, they can't be quite as sure if the student really wants to attend there or if they just threw them on as a last minute thought. So what helps a college understand that your student is really interested in attending is certain things where the student can demonstrate interest. And what does that mean? So that just means that the student, attends an information session, probably online these days, and we'll talk about that. That the student, maybe takes a virtual tour, maybe asks some questions of a student, things like that, so that the college knows that the student is really interested. Now, that can be more important to some colleges than others, but just a good thing to know. And another trend is that parents really drive this process sometimes. And I'm a parent. Jennifer's a parent as well. And we both have students, around the ages of your students. We have a couple of college graduates, and I actually just dropped my youngest off at college, and she had been away for 10 months, but finally went back this weekend. So I know about this, parents being involved, but I will just highly encourage you to be that support, but really make sure that it's the student driving the process. And one way to think about this, I had an admissions person tell me this one time, is think about the skills and qualities you want your student to have when they start college next fall. And maybe use this process as a way to get them there, to make sure they learn to be organized, they learn to advocate for themselves, they learn to make phone calls to ask questions. All of those things can really help the student be ready for being a college student. And then we as parents can be there to support them. The rise of social media, that's kind of a double-edged sword. So one thing that's great these days is that all colleges have social media accounts, and students can really get a lot of information by following a college's social media accounts. And colleges communicate important things that way, and that can be a nice source of information both ways. So that's good. But the negative, or the thing to worry about, is that students should make sure that their social media profiles are in the type of order that they wouldn't mind if anyone saw it. Any college admissions person, any future employer, sometimes I joke and say grandparents. Make sure that those social media profiles are really showing the best sides of the student. College admissions offices are busy. They are not going through the social media accounts of all of the students who apply by any stretch, but I definitely have heard of situations where a college does go and look further into the social media account of a certain student if they have questions or whatever. So that's why that's really important. And lastly, cost has become a bigger factor. And that's because college is expensive. And in a way, it's a good thing that cost has become a bigger factor, in that it's important to keep that right up front in the mix of making sure that you're going to make a good financial decision as well as a good academic and social and decision. So just to make sure that that's a piece of it. So another really overarching point about this college admissions process is that you have to stay organized, and you can do that whatever way you want. MEFA has this great tool called the College Application Manager, and you can download it from our website. But we made this because families would come up to me at seminars in the past and bring up their spreadsheets and show them to me, where they had the whole process organized of, the colleges their students were looking at, the deadlines for both admissions and financial aid, and all of the other requirements. So it's just really important to stay organized with everything that a college will need. And all colleges do things a little bit differently. So have all of that written down somewhere so there can be a checklist and that student doesn't miss any piece of the application. I've seen families, put a whiteboard in the kitchen with all this information, or students might do this on their phones, or they might do it within the an application that they use. So, but whatever you do as a family, stay organized. It will pay dividends. So at this point, the hopefully fun part of this process is that the student should be just researching colleges. What's out there? Where will I be a good fit? What would I like? And so here are some websites that can help a student to do that. So College Navigator and College Scorecards are websites that have a lot of data about all the different colleges. And so students can go in and they can search on by state, by geography, by program, and find a wealth of information about different colleges, and things that are really important, like graduation rate, average graduating debt, number of students in the major that the student is interested in. What are a few others I wrote down? How diverse is the student body? How large are the classes? How likely am I to interact with professors? Very important, when the student is trying to think about what would I like my college experience to be like. So wealth of information there. And some other good sites. A big future is the College Board's college search tool. And again, great website where students can go in and say, I'm interested in these type of programs, and I want to stay in New England, and I'm open to public and private, and then get a list of colleges and look further into them. So some great things to do right from home. And then the last one is Mifa Pathway, and that's MEFA's own free college web portal. And gets its own slide because it's our tool, but this is also a great free college and career planning tool, and it just has a wealth of resources. So mifapathway.org, students can go in, create an account, and they can take some skills assessments, interest assessments, if they're just not sure exactly what they want to study in college, which is extremely common, probably more common than not. Explore careers. Then there's also a great college search in there, as well as a lot of information about financial aid and scholarships. So this is another great tool that students can use right from home. So, lots of times when students start with this process, they really don't know exactly what they're looking for. I always use the example, if we say to a student, oh, do you want to go to a large college or a small college? Well, they might know, maybe they've gone to a huge sporting event at a college and it looked really fun, and they've thought, oh, I'd like to go somewhere like this. This seems like there's a really great atmosphere. All the students bonded together, sports fans, something like that. Or maybe they visited a smaller college and it looked, really intimate, small dining hall where the student would get the sense that they'd really get to know everyone at that college and be able to, have a lot of close friends. So though they might know that from a relative or a friend or from you, parents, but if they don't, those are the things that they have to figure out through this process. So it's a good idea to to look at a number of different types of colleges. And while they can't visit, colleges have done so much, and we're going to talk about that, so that students can really learn a lot from websites online, as well as talking to school counselors and all of that to figure out some of these things and what might be a good fit. So, obviously size and the location of the college is very important. Do they want to stay closer to home or go far away? That can change over time and over the course of this process too. An important piece is to make sure that they're applying to colleges that will be a good academic fit. So your student basically should be on a college campus with students who are academically like them, so that they feel challenged, but they don't feel over their head. And a way to do that is, again, look on college websites. Colleges always share information about the current class. What was the GPA, the average GPA of the students who were admitted last year? If they required tests, what were the test scores of the students who were admitted? What's the profile like? And even deeper, by talking to students and finding out information about that. So utilize those websites, utilize those admissions programs to figure out some of that. And when you can't visit a campus, it's really going to be having conversations with students who are students at those colleges to find out things like campus culture, activities, options for different learning styles. So lots of questions can be asked. Most colleges have things like study abroad programs, internships, career services, all of that. So that's a good thing. But if you have questions about any of that, it's great to ask current students. And so these are all the things that I have seen colleges put together over the last year. And I think they've done a really good job at it. It's hard when students can't visit a campus, but virtual tours can share about the campus. You can still talk to admissions folks, current students. I'm sure that during these events, then they can set you up one-on-one to talk with a professor in a certain department. There are student panels that cover a wide amount of information at the college. So really get online and attend some of these events, just like you're doing tonight, and try to get the best sense you can about colleges that your student would like to attend. And something else that is a little bit on hold this year is college fairs. We were really lucky in this area to have a number of college fairs where colleges from all over the country would come. We've been involved with the NACAC fair that's down at the Seaport, where they bring hundreds of colleges from all over the country, and everyone sets up tables and students walk through. Things like that can't happen right now, but they are happening virtually. So check out that website, nacacfairs.org, and try to attend some of those online. And what that can allow you to do is to talk to admissions representatives, and just like this again, and ask questions. And you can have a really personal experience that way. I have also heard, the fact that everyone is doing the college search process this way, it's opened up some opportunities for some students who, might be interested in a college that's far away and maybe wouldn't have had the chance to visit anyway, and maybe would have felt at a disadvantage. But now you're not. Everyone's doing this online. And so you can keep your options open. I'll just stop because I've been talking a lot, Jennifer. Any questions so far?
We actually do not have any questions. So that means you're doing a great job explaining everything thoroughly.
All right.
Nothing yet, but feel free to type in your questions to the box if you have any.
Thank you. All right, so college fair tips. We're going to go to the next slide. So let's talk about putting together your college list. So do a lot of research, keep an open mind. I would say you really want to, keep it as open a mind as possible and find as much information as you can about as many colleges as possible. But then you will narrow it down. And by next fall, hopefully you can start to narrow it down to the colleges that you want to apply to. And I know we're going to get a question about how many. And sometimes we say 5 to 8 colleges. 9 is actually the average these days. So students do apply to a lot of colleges. But what I'd say is the more, if you're applying to very competitive colleges, you probably have to apply to a few more than if you're applying to colleges where you're fairly certain that you'll be admitted. So let's talk about that. So on your list of colleges, you should have some colleges that are called probable, meaning as a student, you've looked at the college, you've seen what the students who are at that college have for GPA and grades and what their profiles are like, and you think, I'll be a good candidate at that college, and I'll probably get admitted. You want to have some colleges on your list like that because you want to have choices. And we can get into this later, but there might be a chance of some merit aid if you are a really great candidate for admission at some of these colleges. And so you should also make sure that of some of those probable colleges on your list, that at least one is affordable. Maybe one you could commute to, or it's affordable because you think you'll be really high in the admissions pool and could get some merit money. So have some of those on your list. Again, you want options and choices when you're in your senior spring. But then you're probably going to have some target schools where you think you'd be a great candidate for admission, but it may be a small institution or it may be a very competitive institution. And so those types of institutions receive more applications than they can admit, and more applications from very qualified students. So it's kind of more of a 50-50 situation. So you probably will have some target schools on your list that you'd really like to go there, but you hope you could get in, your grades seem in line, but you're not sure. And then you may have a reach school or two on your list. And that would be one of those really competitive institutions that you love everything about it, and they seem to have the program you want, and you've talked to some students and you've attended some information sessions and you think you'd be really happy there, but it's everyone else feels the same way. So by all means, put in those applications, but just know that that they receive many, sometimes thousands and thousands more applications from qualified students than they can admit. And so it's a bit of a risk. It's a bit of a reach. And, but again, especially let's say you're applying to a lot of schools like that, a lot of Ivy League schools and schools of that ilk, you may have to apply to a few more schools than other students do, because with the Ivy Leagues, they are a reach for everyone. It doesn't matter if you have a perfect GPA, perfect standardized test scores, you've done all kinds of activities and everything. Every student who's applying has a profile that looks like that. And so for that reason, it's a reach for everyone. So you want to make sure, again, that you have those options and choices on your list. So now we'll talk about the different college application types, and then we'll stop and maybe take some questions here too. But so what does regular decision look like? Well, that means that the student probably applies to college, to a certain college, with an early January deadline. That's kind of how the regular application process used to work and still works. So usually an early January deadline, and then that college usually lets the student know of a decision sometime in March or April. And then the student has to choose a college by May 1st. At least that's usually the case. Things are a little more flexible these days, but that's kind of the regular decision process. However, I mentioned that there are these early action and early decision processes that a lot of students take advantage of. So let's talk about those. So early action, what that is that colleges, most colleges will allow students to apply early action, meaning there's an early action deadline that's many times in November or early December, and that's all it is. It's just an earlier application deadline. And so then the student can sometimes hear about the decision a little bit earlier, maybe in February, maybe even January, February, March. And so many students take advantage of that. Sometimes if it's a November deadline, they can even hear in December, and before that winter break, at least know of a decision of a couple of colleges. Sometimes students will just apply to some colleges early and some regular. So your school counselor can also help you think about if it's a good idea to apply regular decision or early action. But again, other than the deadline and when you find out, there's not much different there. The one that is different is early decision. And that is a binding agreement. And so when you apply early decision to a college, what you are saying to that college is, if you admit me, I will come, I will attend. So for early decision, deadlines are usually the first early decision, and sometimes there's early decision 1, early decision 2. The first one is usually in November, and the second one can be in December. And students then usually find out the decision in December or maybe January. And the decision, once they find out the decision, if they are admitted, they really have signed an agreement, and they've signed it, their school counselor has signed it, saying, I will attend. So that's something to really consider, and it's serious. So what should be in place for you to take advantage of that early decision? That it is far and away the student's number one choice. They really want to go there, and are willing to then withdraw all of their applications from all of the other places and never hear if they were admitted or what financial aid would have been available. So that has to be in place. And really the other thing that has to be in place is that you as a family have done some really good research into estimated financing and what a financial aid award would look like at that institution, so that you can be sure that you can afford it. And we'll talk about ways that you can do that and get a sense of what a financial aid award might look like for you. Because again, you're saying, I'm coming and I don't care what all the other colleges are going to award me. You don't get to look at all the others once you're admitted. So think carefully about that. And the last thing I'll say is your student and you supporting the student have to be so on board with attending that school, even knowing that it's likely that if your student received financial aid awards from some other schools, they might receive much more money because that's the way it works. Some students will apply early decision to a really competitive institution, and they might have applied to another institution that had a lot of merit money, but you have to be willing to give that up and willing to say, we're gonna come and we're gonna pay. So a lot to think about with early decision. Rolling admission just means that some colleges open up their admissions process and you can apply on a rolling basis at any time. And with those, I would just encourage you to apply as early as possible, because if it opens up in November and it goes all the way through May, financial aid could be spent at some point. So it's just important to apply early, as early as you can with rolling admissions. And the last one is open admission. So that is, for example, with our Massachusetts community colleges. So with our community college system, any student can be admitted. And once you're a high school graduate, you can be admitted or equivalent. So that's terrific because that's open admission. It doesn't mean that they're not going to have to work hard when they get there and have great classes, but it just means that that's the wonderful thing about our community college system. It's open admission. Important, though, to know that although they can definitely go to any community college, it doesn't mean that every single program will be open. Some programs at community colleges have a limited number of students, and they probably will take the students with the highest grades and best fit, and there might be more of an application process for certain programs. But other than that, in general, students can go to community college. So I'll stop there for a minute, Jennifer, too.
Yes, so we did have a couple of questions around early decision. And one is, this is the main one, is it a good idea to apply early decision to those reach schools?
So here's the thing. Early decision, it's more about applying early decision to the top one school that the student really wants to go to. So it's more about that than about the college's competitiveness, if that makes sense. However, I think I understand maybe what's being asked here too is, in other words, is there an advantage in admission if you apply early decision? And so I guess what I would say is that, remember I talked about demonstrated interest, and that it is good for a college to have a good sense of if you're going to come. That shows demonstrated interest. And so I guess by applying early decision, that's the ultimate in demonstrated interest, because you're saying, yes, I will come. So that can be a slight edge in the admissions process. It really can. So that's really important to know. But it's also important to know that on the financial side, you have to be sure that you're going to be able to pay for it. Otherwise, you could be giving up financial aid awards that are different and more and what coming from a number of other institutions, and you just give up being able to look at those at all. So just know what you're giving up. But other than that, yes, there can be a slight advantage to that.
Thanks, Julie. And one other around early decision, how many colleges can a student apply to early decision? Just one?
One. Yes, so you're applying to one college early decision because you are saying you are far and away my top choice, and I will withdraw my applications from all other institutions if I'm accepted.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's all the questions for now.
All right.
All right.
All right, so let's talk about the application itself and how you're going to put that together. So these are all the components of a college admissions application. So there's usually a form, and that form can take different forms. So here are some of the common forms. The biggest one being the Common App. So that's at commonapp.org. That opens August 1st for the new year. So if your student is going to be a senior in the fall, August 1st, the Common App will open for that admission cycle. And as I mentioned, the thing about that is a student goes in and starts completing that Common App organization and then can just say, oh, I want to send it here and here and here. So it is a nice way to apply to a number of schools completing one application. And the Universal College App is similar. And some colleges require, allow that as part of the application. So as their application. So a student would go to universalcollegeapp.com and again, be able to say, oh, okay, and I want to send it to this and this school. And a third is called the Coalition app. And you can see the website there, coalitionforcollegeaccess.org. Similar. Now, many colleges will allow multiple types of applications. So for example, there are very few colleges that only require the Coalition app. I think it's something like 3. The rest usually would accept the Coalition app and the Common App or something like that. So again, go on the college website to the admissions page and find out what are the options for the college application form. And then some colleges just might have a website application or even a paper app that you could find. But most will have you apply through one of those other application forms. And then here are all the other pieces that could be part of your application. The form, definitely your high school transcript, maybe standardized test scores, usually letters of recommendation from a couple of teachers or counselor, usually an activity list or a resume, and a personal essay. And then the last 3 are less common. So only some colleges require an interview. And then only colleges where the student is applying to a specific program, usually in theater or music or art, would maybe an audition or a portfolio be required. All right, so a few words about academic readiness. I will say when I talk to admissions folks, they always say the most important part of the application or the most important thing that they're concerned about in bringing a student to their school is that the student can do the work. So that high school transcript is a really important part of the application. And colleges really pour over that to make sure that the student they're admitting is going to be able to do the work at their institution. It's just super important. So what do they want to see on that? Well, they want to see rigor, meaning they want to see that a student challenged themselves in high school. So does your high school offer honors classes, AP classes, things like that? If so, as a student, have you taken advantage of some of those? And that shows that you have, been trying to take harder classes and really challenge yourself. And so then that always brings the question about, well, is it better to get an A in a regular class or a B in an AP class? And in general, colleges will say they want to see students who've challenged themselves. So they want to see that you've tried to take challenging classes and haven't just completely, taken easier classes just for the A. So go for the challenge, but I'm going to put this caveat here. That doesn't mean you need to totally stress yourself out and take every honors, every AP class, and be a total stressful mess by the time you're doing these applications. You know, be smart about it. Take those, challenge yourself in those subjects where you really think you want to go further, and really round yourself out. And if you are challenged in some regular classes, then that's terrific. So try to keep a good schedule for yourself and don't overtax yourself, but yet do challenge yourself and know that colleges will like to see that you've done that. Colleges also like to see improvement over time. They know that a high school freshman might have some challenges adjusting to high school at the beginning, but if they can see that transcript improved, that's great. They also like to see if you've exceeded minimum requirements and maybe taken some electives, and also like to see that maybe your challenging classes are in subjects relevant to the program you're applying to. So if you're applying to an engineering program, they probably want to see that you've taken higher levels of math, things like that. There is a sliding scale for mass public colleges and universities about GPA and standardized test scores. So you can find that as well, but many times you want to exceed those minimum requirements. Now, all right, standardized tests. This is a whole big subject currently. So let me just try to talk about it in general and then talk about what the situation is right now. So many colleges, up until now especially, have required a standardized test score, being either the SAT or ACT. There are many colleges who don't require it, and you can see that bottom website there, fairtest.org, provides a list of over 1,000 test optional schools. So those institutions do not require a standardized test for admission. And that list is growing. And now, during COVID, when there were tests that were canceled last year, tests that are still being canceled, and it's more difficult to be sure that you're taking these tests and maybe taking them twice, many colleges, even those that have required standardized tests in the past and may in the future, are being very lenient about this requirement. So they're being very flexible and very lenient this year. So just know that. If you've been having a hard time being able to take one of these tests and you're stressed out about it, just know that you have, good company where this has been the case for students in your grade level. And colleges know that, and they have reimagined their admissions process. And they're, for example, right now for the seniors, they're working through that without standardized tests largely because it's been so difficult. So relax about it. However, if you are able to take a standardized test, most school counselors are still saying, go for it, still take it, because at this point, you can decide to send it or not send it. And so if you take a standardized test and you do well on it, that's great. That's another part of your application, and that could help you. And if you don't do so well and you decide not to send it, it probably isn't going to hurt you right now in the current environment. So that's what I'd say about standardized test scores. The only other piece I'll talk about is preparing for them. So PSAT is a practice test for the SAT, and ACT has a practice test online as well. The most important thing you can do to be ready to take one of these assessments is to practice. And there are a lot of free ways to practice online. You can go and take a free test on the College Board website for the SAT or on the ACT website. And students who take a test and then see what they did wrong, go back, try to learn the knowledge that, was on the test that they were tested on that they got wrong, and then go back and take it again and take it timed. So they just are used to taking one of these bears of a test. That's really what to do. So the more practice, the better, however you can do it. And again, there's a lot of free help online. So look at all those websites and practice, take some tests, and then send them if it's going to help you. And if it isn't, you're going to have some leniency this year. Any questions around that, Jennifer?
Yes, I was going to stop you. So this is a common question that we get. What is the difference between the SAT and the ACT? You knew that was coming, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, so the thing is, they have more similarities than differences in that they're multiple choice tests, they're long, they're grueling sometimes, but the differences are, I'll just talk about what some people have said some of the differences are. The SAT is known for having maybe some trickier questions. How did someone say it to me recently? Just more challenging texts that the students have to read through, and maybe more challenging problems. So that's one way it's described. But then the ACT is a faster pace. They ask more questions. So students, when they're taking the ACT, rarely finish all of the questions. So that can be challenging in and of itself. The ACT has a science section, but really it's just about reading graphs and analyzing data. And that's covered in the SAT as well. So, but some people think the ACT is a little more straightforward, just a faster test, whereas the SAT is a little, takes a little more time to get through those texts. The people that I know who are in the testing field say, here's what to do. Take one of each, online, free, and the student can see how they feel taking the test, see how they do, first of all. So see which test they do better on, and also think about how they felt taking it, which one they liked better or disliked less. And then once they do that and they choose one, then just practice and practice and practice one, because all colleges take either one equally. So that's sort of the strategy that most testing professionals have laid out to me.
That's great. Thank you, Julie. We don't have any other questions around standardized tests at this point. So thank you.
So then we talked about part of the application is usually an activity list and a resume. So basically what colleges are looking for here is, what does the student do outside of school? So that could definitely be a sport, or they could be in band, or could be community service. It could also be a job, or it could be family responsibilities. Maybe a student comes home and takes care of younger siblings after school. So a student shouldn't feel like there has to be pressure of exactly what this activity list should look like. It doesn't need to be extensive. It just needs to show the college how you spend your time outside of school. And it could be any of those things I mentioned. And it is nice if they can see some leadership that happens over time. So maybe student has a job for a couple of years in high school and then they get promoted in that job. That shows some leadership. Or maybe the student is a team captain, or maybe in a community service activity, they've led some of the events, organized them. So all of those leadership skills are really good to show here as well. And then the essay. Now the essay is a really important part of the application if a college requires it, because the college is going to be looking at your transcript and your resume and some other things. So what they really want to get a sense of here is something about you that they can't necessarily see from other parts of your application. So you want to write about something that you care about and that you want to write about. And if you are interested in it and feel good about writing about it, that's going to come out. And the person reading it is going to be able to feel that. And again, it really needs to be about you. So an example of that is sometimes students will want to write about a relative, a grandparent who had a big influence on them, or an aunt or an uncle or a cousin. But you have to just be careful to not make the essay about that other person. Make it about you. Maybe you learned something from that relative, but how has that changed you, and how have you, acted because of it? So make sure it's about you. And again, make sure it's something meaningful to you. So one admissions colleague I have says that you should read your essay out loud in front of the mirror and see how you feel reading it. Are you excited to read it? And do you feel good when you're reading it, or are you bored? Because how you feel reading it is probably how the admissions person will feel reading it. So again, that essay needs to have a little personality in it. The best thing you can do is start writing early. Maybe some of your English classes this spring will have you start to write an essay. And the good thing is, if you start writing early, you can choose some topics that you want to write about, and then you can have time to say, oh, I thought I wanted to write about this, but I got kind of bored with it and I really didn't have much to say. But instead, I'm going to write about this, and I felt like I have a lot to say here. And then you have a chance to share it with some people too. Maybe you share it with a good friend or parent. But the key in sharing is you want to share it because someone else can give you some good thoughts about it, but it should be yours. It should be your choice, and you should write about it how you want to write about it, and take little tidbits of advice from those you share it with. Maybe a parent will tell you, you mentioned this story, but I wanted to hear more. Maybe you should say a little more about that. Things like that will be great feedback for you, rather than having someone tell you, don't write about this or don't write about that. So it really should be yours. You definitely want to make it all your words. You don't want to plagiarize. Colleges won't like that at all. And then, of course, you want it to be grammatically correct and have no spelling errors. So that's another good reason to share it with some other people and to run it through spell check. So take some time with the essay, and nobody writes anything that's, well, hardly anyone can write something that's great right off the bat. And good writing usually takes a number of edits. So the earlier you start with this, you can keep editing, so it'll be ready next fall. And here are, the Common App has these 7 essay prompts. This was for this current class, but they don't change much. So you can see here what some of the questions are like. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? So that's, fairly open. Describe a problem you've solved or a problem you'd like to solve. And then you can see the last one is share an essay on any topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. So the bottom line is you can write about anything. These prompts are here just to help you think about what you want to write about. I'll also add that the Common App has added a little section where you can talk about how COVID-19 has affected you and your family, so that you don't have to write about that in your essay, so that you can write about that in that little section, and then you can write the essay about something else. Because, unfortunately, COVID-19 has affected all of us. And so all of the students who will be applying with you all probably have their own stories. So it's better if you can have something more unique to write about. Doesn't mean you can't write about that, but make sure there are some other aspects to your essay. And then letters of recommendation are very important too, because you want to find a teacher, 2 teachers that know you well and that can write about you. So find out from your high school counselor, what are your high school guidelines for doing this? But most schools will tell you, even as far as spring of junior year, you can start to think about who you would like to ask to write a recommendation. And maybe there's a form that your school counselor can give you, where then you send that form to a teacher and ask them to write a recommendation for you. The more you can tell them about yourself and your plans, I think the more that will help them to, in how they're writing about you. But really, it should be, a lot of people use junior year teachers, but really it should be just someone who can really speak about you and share a really personal perspective about you.
Julie, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment, if you don't mind, with a really great question. And it goes back to the essay. Can you copy the essay from one application to another, or is that considered plagiarism or in bad taste?
Oh, that's great. No, you can use the same essay for all of the colleges. Is that the question? So yes. So you can use the same essay at all of the colleges. And in fact, if you go into the Common App, for example, or one of those other applications, you'll only have to do one essay and send it to all of the colleges. So that's terrific. And you can definitely do that. Now, some colleges will sometimes require a second essay, or some even a third. And in those cases, sure thing, you can use, if you've written a great paper in school this year, you can use that if it fits what they're asking for some of those other essays. So you can always use essays. I mean, and then you can take those essays and use them for scholarship applications. So the key is that the essay has to be completely and fully written by you. So you just don't want to plagiarize anyone else's words. They have to be your words. But once you've written them, you can use that essay in many different ways. So that's a great question.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie.
And so interviews. So I mentioned the fact that many colleges don't require interviews. Some offer them and some require them. So let's just talk about the difference. So 2 types. So one is an informational interview, and that's usually one that's not required. And then one is an evaluative interview, meaning that's required as part of the admissions process. So find out right away, does the college require an interview? And if they do require it, then yes, you want to do it. And in fact, most colleges that I know will do that evaluative interview after you've submitted the admissions application. But there are some who require that even before you've submitted your application. So make sure you go to the college website and find out what's required. And if it's required, do it. And we'll talk about doing it in a minute. But if it's just an informational interview that's not required, I would say it's a great thing to do, really for yourself in some ways, so that you can learn a lot. You'll be talking to either a current student or someone in the admissions office who knows a ton about the college or university, and you can ask all your questions and they can give you some advice too. So it's a nice thing to do. as an informational interview, and it's necessary if it's a required interview. So once you know whether you're going to do one or not, probably these days it will be over Zoom. And you just want to be prepared to answer open-ended questions. The folks who do these interviews talk to students your own age all the time. And so they like talking to students. They enjoy your student's age, 17, 18. So they're going to ask you, what's the last book you read for fun? What do you and your friends do when you hang out? Things like that. So it's just make sure you're sort of prepared to just open up about yourself and share. And then you also want to be prepared to just have a good understanding of the college so that you can ask some smart questions too. You just don't want to ask a question that maybe could have been answered on the front page of the college website. So just make sure that you have a couple of questions that are real questions that you have about the college lined up. And then it will be a two-way conversation and it should go very well. Relax and be yourself. All right. And anything else before I talk about the admissions decision?
No.
All right. So then once student has applied, either, early action, early decision, regular decision, the colleges will then go through their process and eventually then present the student with the admissions decision. And it can be any of these. So it could be that you're admitted. Yay. It could be, if you apply early action or early decision, it could be they would say to you, we are going to defer you to the regular applicant pool. So they just didn't feel like they could admit you early action or early decision, but they want to put you in the regular pool. That sometimes happens. Or you could be just outright denied, or you could be waitlisted. And we can talk about what that means in a moment. And then most colleges, some will still mail decisions, but many email them. And these days, a lot of colleges post them to their online portal. So when you apply to a college, you'll probably get an email back that will say, thank you for your application. Go register or sign up for our online portal. And so that's a really important step to take as a student. Go in and do that because you don't want to miss any of that communication. And that is how many colleges put their admissions decision out there on their online portal. Then the normal college admissions decision day is May 1st. And that means that's the day that students have to decide where they're going to go and put a deposit down at that college. And for all my years, working in this field, that has been the day that students have to deposit. Last year, colleges were very lenient about that May 1st decision because of COVID and because of everything. And so I don't know, this year they may be lenient as well, and I'm not sure what will happen next year. But in general, consider that May 1st probably will be around the time where you'll be securing a spot at a college. And I'll ask one more time just in case before I move to college affordability. We're good?
I think we're good for now, yes.
All right. So we mentioned at the beginning that it is important to think about affordability as part of this college decision because you want to make a good decision for students and parents and family. So here are some questions right now you can begin to look into and research about different colleges. What is the cost of attendance and the net price? So that's important because the published prices of colleges sometimes, privates in this area could be, $70,000, but The key is the net price, and that is that cost of attendance minus any scholarship or grants that students are awarded. And that's the net price. So that's the price that you will actually pay as a family. And I'm going to show you a tool where you can find that out a little bit better. But the key to know is that there's a lot of financial aid out there, need-based aid, merit-based aid. And so the key is not that larger cost of attendance, but what most families pay and what you will pay. So that's important to know. Then it's also just good to check in advance what financial aid applications are required. Good to know what type of aid a college awards. Do they award only need-based aid or also merit-based aid? And you can also start looking for private scholarships that are outside of the admissions and financial aid process at colleges, because there are many private organizations that have scholarships for students, and we'll show you how to do that as well. So, net price calculator. So how do you figure out what the net price is? Every college has one of these calculators on their website. It's a federal requirement. The only thing is it's not always super easy to find, but you should be able to just type net price calculator into the search bar on a college website and find a calculator that you can then go in and plug in information about family finances and student academics to get an estimate of the net college price. So it should show you an estimate of the type of financial aid your student could receive at that institution. Now, it could be federal aid, could be need-based aid based on the finances you put in, and it could also be some merit-based aid based on the academics you put in, the GPA and standardized test scores. So put in your data as accurately as you can, and you'll get hopefully a fairly good estimate of what type of financial aid could be awarded. Now, I wouldn't necessarily use this calculator as a way to say to your students, don't apply there, it's too expensive, or vice versa. Oh, we got a lot of aid at this college, you should apply, because these are estimates. But they're good conversation starters of, oh, you like that school, and I did the net price calculator, and it looks like they would give you some financial aid. Maybe that's a good one for your list. Or the other side, I ran the net price calculator for that institution, and they didn't show that they would give you a lot of aid. Maybe you should add another more affordable college to your list as well, so that you'll have some choices next spring. So it's just good to help you plan. And then all colleges are going to require this first form, the free application for federal student aid. So you'll have to fill out the FAFSA, and you'll do that anytime after October 1st of your student's senior year. And I would say as soon as possible after October 1st. Why not? Because you're going to be using your 2020 income, and your taxes should be done by that point. So you can sit right down and get that done. Some colleges will also require this other form called the Css Profile. And that's usually private institutions with a lot of their own institutional dollars who need a little more information than is asked on the FAFSA. So make sure that you find out what forms are required from the colleges that your student will apply to. And sometimes colleges might have their own college-specific financial aid application. So if so, you need to complete that as well. And then here are two programs that I think are great to just look into and do some research about. The first one is called Mass Transfer, and there's a great website there, mass.edu/mass transfer. And this website shows all the programs where if a student starts at a community college and then transfers to a four-year public in Massachusetts, it can be a much more affordable option. They can save a lot of money where there's guaranteed credit transfer, there's a tuition credit, freeze on tuition. So it's a really great website to research. And I will also mention that that MEFA Pathway .org that I showed you early on has a calculator in there where you can see how a student can save money by starting at community college versus going straight to a 4-year. So great thing to research, especially in the affordability category. And this other one is called Tuition Break. So this is a website that shows if a certain state, like if Massachusetts doesn't have a certain program, but they have it in Connecticut at UConn, then the student could go to UConn and pay Massachusetts in-state tuition prices. And there are a very large number of programs that fall into this category. So this is a terrific website to research as well. And then here is a timeline. So here you are at spring. No, you're in winter still, very much so. But you will be in spring of junior year. You're ahead of the timeline. You want to just continue to research colleges. You cannot visit campuses for the most part, but you can do all of that stuff virtually with colleges, and including college fairs. And this spring, you probably want to ask some teachers for letters of recommendation. And if you get the chance, take one of those standardized tests. Also start writing that essay. And then in the fall, maybe you'll have the chance to retake the SAT or ACT. Make sure you have those letters of recommendation, finalize your essay, finishing touches. And MEFA has a great college financing webinar where we take you through applying for financial aid, everything. So make sure you attend one of those. And then your student will complete all the admissions applications in the fall and into the winter and submit financial aid applications at the same time. And then, let's see, I have something covering my screen here. Winter of senior year, submitting any of those last regular decision applications and financial aid, and applying for private scholarships. So actually, check out the MEFA website for websites where you can apply for private scholarships. MEFA Pathway has a scholarship search tool, and we have others. And in fact, I'm doing a webinar soon this month on applying for scholarships, private outside scholarships that are outside of the financial aid process. So that's just a good thing to be thinking of between now and all the way into next year. And sometimes if a student applied early, they can then follow up and send in mid-year grade reports. And then spring next year, students will receive their admissions and financial aid offers. And MEFA is really here to help you all the way along with all of that. And hopefully at that point, maybe you'll actually be able to attend some college open house programs on campus. We'll see. But you'll be choosing a college next year. And you can look at our timeline at that website below. So you're already signed up for our webinars because you're here tonight. Start researching your colleges and creating that college list. And I'm sure you'll tweak that a lot between now and the fall. And stay in touch with MEFA on social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. We have all of our webinars recorded on YouTube. And you can always call us, email us with quick questions, longer questions, all of that. And if you want, you can share a Google review too, just so that other families will find us and know that they can get this free help from MEFA. So what else?
Okay, we do have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So in the event of early action or early decision applications, typically do those application does that timing result in less or more financial aid given by the schools?
Great questions. So, and I've asked a lot of colleges about this. Most colleges have assured me that they have financial aid policies on their campus, and they have, a way that they distribute aid based on need or merit. So in general, it should be the same. It really should be the same, because no matter when you apply, if you qualify, you should receive the amount of aid that you're eligible for, need-based wise and merit-based wise. So that's the first thing I'll say. However, what I have learned the last few years is there are some colleges that do save a lot of their merit-based scholarships, or not save, award a lot of their merit-based scholarships earlier. But I'm talking about early action, just students who apply early using those early action. And some colleges will come out and tell you right up front, you have to apply early action if you want to be eligible for certain scholarships. So really look at that on each college website, maybe on your spreadsheet, make a note of that and make sure, if that's the case, that you want to apply early action to those institutions that have their merit aid for early applications. For early decision, those early decision colleges are the ones who are primarily awarding need-based aid. I don't think that's too much of an exaggeration. And those are the schools that have told me they really try to keep to the policies, and someone is going to receive a similar type award. I know that could probably go either way sometimes, because if you're saying early decision that you're going to come, maybe that gives a little less leverage in appealing some of that financial aid, but also you are showing that demonstrated interest, and colleges want to, admit students they know will come and make it so they can attend. So I'm going to go right down the middle there and say, with early decision, you're pretty much going to receive the same award you would no matter when you apply. But with early action, check those websites. And if there are special scholarships awarded early, apply early.
That's great. Thank you, Julie. And then there was one more question around when you talk about financial aid, do you mean loans that need to be paid back or grants that do not need to be paid back when you talk about that term, financial aid?
So great. So that's the second slide of our college financing presentation that you will attend in the fall. Or actually, we probably have a few this spring too. So when we talk about financial aid, it's everything that is going to help you pay for college. And it's usually in three categories: grants and scholarship, all money that is free awarded to the student; work study programs that students work for that money; and federal student loans. So that one category of loans that is low interest loans from the federal government in the student's name only, that have caps and low interest rates and lots of repayment provisions, and can even be partially subsidized so that the government pays the interest while the student is in college. So that's why those very specific federal student loans are part of that financial aid, all part of that financial aid. Great question.
Yes, good one. We don't have any outstanding questions at this time. So I think, oh, I do have one. If you could go through the wait list a little bit, what that means, being on the wait list.
Yes, thank you. I said I would, and then I didn't. So thank you for reminding me. Yes. So, colleges have a wait list, and basically, if you are told you're on the wait list, there are a few things you should do. Number one, you should decide if you'd still really like to go to that college, then you want to accept your position on the wait list and write back to them and say, yes, I want to stay on the wait list. because otherwise they might think you're not interested. So tell them that you want to stay on the wait list. But then mentally move on, for at least temporarily, move on and start thinking about the schools that you're admitted to and where you're going to go. It doesn't mean you can't continually go back to the school where you're on the wait list and share more information. Maybe you have second semester grades, maybe you've received an award, or you've done some other great community service, and you want to share that with the college where you're on the wait list. You absolutely can and should. And in fact, I've been told, be in touch often with the school that you're on the wait list, so that you'll be demonstrating your interest in coming off that wait list. But some colleges have really long wait lists, and they're just there, so that they'll never be without students who can attend. And so again, it is really important to move on and make your other plans. And especially by May 1st, you're going to have to deposit somewhere else. Sometimes students get called off the wait list over the summer or something. You will lose that deposit at that first school, but you do have to move on and deposit. And another important thing to know, and maybe a question to ask, is what financial aid is attached to the wait list, because sometimes it's different financial aid when you're coming off the wait list, and that's really, really important to know. So tell them you want to stay on the wait list, but ask some questions about, will financial aid be available? Is it the same financial aid that would have been otherwise? Things like that.
Great, thank you, Julie. And that's all for questions. Nothing else has come in.
All right. Well, Jennifer, thank you. And thank you everyone for all those great questions. And please do stay in touch with us and come back and learn about financial aid and scholarships and all of our other great webinars. And have a good evening.